This is a data privacy detective. And today we're going to talk about cities and privacy by talking to New York City's Chief Privacy Officer, Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Joseph. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a real pleasure. And you've had a world of experience in this area, and you had the Office of Information Privacy, and that's placed within the New York City Office of Technology and Innovation. And the mayor has created the prior mayor, Bill de Blasio, I think, started it in 2018. And today, your office is there to promote and advance privacy protection across government operations. And there are a lot of them. New York City has, 300,000 employees? You can imagine all the things the city does, and establishes citywide policies and protocols related to identifying information, often called PII, or personally identifiable information. So let me start with this, Mike. What do you do? What does a city's chief privacy officer do?
Oh, thank you for that question, Joseph. And certainly, when you think about an entity like New York City, which this year is celebrating its 400th anniversary, and then you consider our office, the Office of Information Privacy, it's a kindness to call us a new kid on the block. We've been around since 2017, when New York City passed its local privacy law, known as the Identifying Information Law. And that law intends to and does provide a framework upon which New York City agencies interact and with respect to the collection and disclosure of identifying information. My responsibility as Chief Privacy Officer is to support the implementation of that law through a number of verticals, inclusive of, as you mentioned, setting citywide privacy policy for all New York City agencies.
Right, and that must be a challenge. I've read through the February 2023 citywide privacy protection policies and protocols, which I think you authored, or at least your name's on it, and it's a tremendous thing that any city really ought to think about. And part of it is, I think each agency within the city then is supposed to have its own privacy officer to give you kind of a group of people you can deal with. Am I right about that?
You're exactly right, Joseph. And that's one of the many remarkable things that has resulted from our local privacy law, perhaps not as necessarily intended, but what is effectively done. And you think about, as you point out, New York City, something as grand in scale, with a workforce of over 300,000 full-time employees, supporting a population in excess of 8 million people. What we have now, as a result of our local privacy law, is the requirement that every city agency head, that is their commissioner, designate a privacy officer to support the implementation of privacy policy at the agency level and facilitate local law compliance. And what has that resulted in? We actually have, across the full gambit of municipal services, a privacy Rolodex that we can call upon to coordinate and support interagency operations and initiatives, ranging from police, fire, healthcare, education, and everything in between.
Yeah, healthcare, just all the various things. You're a government, but in a way, you're a huge business also. And so you have to balance, I would think, the need for open records. You're part of government. And of course, personal information needed by city agencies to be a good health system, be a good police department, fire department, so on. But you have to balance those against the need for reasonable personal privacy protections. So let me ask you this: what are the big challenges you face?
Well, as we touch on, certainly scale can be a challenge, right? We've got a workforce with privacy responsibilities. That's growing on a full-time basis, but we're in the 200s now. Those folks are augmented at the agency level by support staff, but there's only so many places that you can be. And as technology evolves and technology becomes more a part of how city services are delivered, it puts a premium on investments within our city's privacy workforce. And this administration has really embraced that. The full-time headcount of my office has expanded by virtue of the investments made in this administration under the leadership of Mayor Adams and our Chief Technology Officer, Matthew Frazier. But we've also implemented a number of initiatives to strengthen our privacy workforce. And that really begins with getting folks exposure to being a privacy professional, particularly a privacy professional in New York City government. And we've done that through our partnership with Fordham Law School. We've actually created a first of its kind externship program that provides the opportunity for full-time law students to spend a semester with us to learn about the operations of what a central municipal privacy office operates, certainly one within the scale of New York City, but also provides the professional development opportunities for the full-time staff in the Office of Information Privacy. I've actually got two members of my team who, by virtue of this partnership, now have the ability to call themselves adjunct professors of law, which is quite significant.
Well, it's really great. I think what you're communicating is it's really a matter of creating a whole culture and understanding of how privacy interacts with government needs and responsibilities rather than you ordering people what to do. Is that it in a nutshell?
That's exactly right. We operate in a world where sure there are privacy laws and we follow them and we interpret them. Sometimes there are black and white, but sometimes there's gray. And that's really where the protections of good privacy policy can come in. Thinking through principles of data minimization. One of the significant steps that we took in that February 2023 update that you referenced was within the bounds of our city's privacy principles, we added equity. And we did that quite intentionally. We have to recognize from a privacy protection perspective on the municipal level, we are naturally going to hold more information of certain groups of people than others. And as a result, we've got to calibrate initiatives to recognize and think through those considerations, recognizing they're not binary, but thinking through those considerations.
Well, equity is a good one. Let's just touch on that a little more. I mean, we all want equity, right? On the other hand, whatever the group is, AI uses differences in DNA to say things. There's always another side to it. So, how do you approach equity as a desire within the privacy sphere?
Absolutely, and we accomplish that through a few different ways. I mentioned our citywide privacy network, right? That allows us to get subject matter expertise at agencies concerned or involved in particular initiatives to get the benefit of their experience. But when we also talk about AI utilization, for example, we touch on the creation of the Office of Technology and Innovation. And that's really a significant part of the Office of Information Privacy's journey and story so far. Moving under the umbrella created under Mayor Adams and led by CTO Frazier, we've got the ability to partner not just with our great colleagues at the Office of Cyber Command, who carry New York City's information security portfolio, but other city technology-related offices and entities, inclusive of our partners in the Strategic Initiatives Division of the Office of Technology and Innovation, who carry the responsibility of implementing our citywide artificial intelligence action plan. We have the ability to work across the aisle, hand in hand with those folks to support the plan's implementation, inclusive of alignment with our city's AI principles, with our privacy principles to help support. When we're talking about technology, we're talking about it in one voice that's comprehensive in alignment with the various stakeholder ecosystems that exist in New York City.
Right. Now, in the United States, a CPO, whether it's for a state, I think more than half the states now have chief privacy officers, but very different from the European model of a data privacy authority, which could fine people and take charge. Does your office have any role in levying penalties on anybody or any enforcement authority, or is it more what you've described so far?
So I think our bread and butter has been historically and continues to be the advisory services elements of our work. We have not had a role historically in enforcement, though certainly we can, if we're seeing perhaps a vendor who's not executed their contract appropriately, certainly as it relates to privacy commitments, that's something that we would consider on a case-by-case basis. But from the advisory services perspective, I think it's really important for us to emphasize that in our work, because we want our client agencies to come to us. The more that you branch into an enforcement responsibility and role, I think it can negatively impact that very important work that we do as an office.
Well, what you just said is really important, because if somebody within a city comes to another agency and says, I'm not here to fine you or get you fired, I'm here to help you comply, it's totally different message, isn't it?
That's exactly right.
Yeah. I couldn't find a lot of other U.S. cities that have a designated CPO. In 2018, there were two, Seattle and New York City. How about now? Are we seeing a spread of CPOs across American cities?
That's a really great observation. We've certainly made contact with more. Now, is that because there's more being created? I'm not quite sure. There are limits to that information, and it's something that we are thinking about and trying to better connect our community of municipal chief privacy officers across the United States.
Yeah, I'll give you a peer group to talk with now and then. Yeah, sure.
That's exactly right. But we actually have for quite a bit now, and not too far after I started here back in April of 2022. Boy, time flies. Connection and regular meetings with our partner privacy officers in Austin, Texas, as well as the city of Seattle. We've also got connections in San Diego and Boston as well. So we're growing, and we look forward to continue to expand that. But as you touched on earlier, Joseph, with our policies and our privacy officer toolkit, for example, the toolkit was a document and a universe of guidance that we had historically kept internal to New York City to support the work of our privacy officers. Last year, on Last Data Privacy Day, we made the decision to publish our toolkit publicly.
Great idea.
We were very intentional in that regard. Not only did we want to provide the public with added visibility about the work that we are doing as a city in terms of privacy protection, we also wanted to make as much information as possible available for other cities to look to, recognizing they may not be as far along in their privacy maturity and journey, and give them a head start.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. We're winding towards the end of our session today. How will you measure the success of your office?
Gosh, that's a great question, and one that I often think about. For me, I think it really touches on level of contact with the office. The more engagement that we are getting from our client agencies, the more engagement that we are getting from our partners at City Hall and across the leadership of the administration. That is really the metric of success for me, because it helps my calibration that we are in the right places that we need to. I balance that keeping up to date with what's happening in New York City. You're tracking the news, tracking the press and the media. And making sure that we're in alignment with, as there are public facing initiatives evolved, we've got those touch points, and we're closing gaps as appropriate. And thankfully, we're less about closing gaps and more about reading about the accomplishments that we've helped facilitate as an agency.
Bad news for you. I think one of the problems is you're going. I'm kidding about bad news, but there's no doubt that you're going to reduce compliance costs for city agencies that do things wrong. And then there's a data breach or there's a problem, and there's no question there's going to be money saved, but I don't know how you measure that. It's hard to prove.
It's the age-old challenge of proving a negative, right?
How can you do it? Well, my last question, what one or two top tips do you have for other cities about data privacy?
Gosh, that's a great question. I think there's many unique aspects about being a city, being a local municipality. And a kind of a core element of our work as privacy professionals is calibrated to the expectations of our constituents. And so to get started, I think you've really got to listen to the public and be receptive to the concerns that they are raising as it relates to privacy protection, and then thinking through those considerations in terms of establishing the office. The other element that's of critical importance, and we've talked about it, is transparency. You've got to make sure that the public has information available about how you're spending your time, the investments, how we are thinking about privacy from a policy and governance perspective. That's very, very important and can really help make or break somebody's decision about seeking government help or not. We want to make sure that we're enabling that public confidence in our work.
Very good. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Great advice to other cities about thinking about a CPO and what it can do. As always, I will close by reminding us all, protecting your personal privacy begins with you. And I'll add a postscript today. The same's true for cities. Thinking about protecting the city's personal privacy information begins with cities. Thank you all, and we'll see you next time.